Though it wasn't as much of a banger as 2023 was, 2024 was still insane with amazing new releases. Seriously, I'm somebody who covers video games for a living across 3 separate YouTube channels, 4 if you want to count Watch Mojo and Mojo Plays separately, and I had a really hard time keeping up this year. My wallet is not happy with me. But after playing as many games as I could between my professional duties and personal interests, I believe I have come up with the list of the 10 best games that came out this year. However, I want to establish some rules before we move forward with the list. These are designed to kind of keep my opinion as honest as possible. Rule number 1. I had to have finished the main campaign, or at least done a single playthrough if the game has multiple endings. If not, at least get through a majority of the game. Rule number 2. Early access titles do not count because they are not done developing the game. Rule number 3. Online multiplayer games do not count. Anything can be fun with friends, but that doesn't necessarily mean the game itself is fun. Rule number 4. Re-releases and remasters do not count because they are basically the same exact game. Remakes are allowed so long as significant fundamental changes were made that differ from the original release. Rule number 5. No games from Tencent or SNK because I refuse to support the CCP or the Saudi royal family. And lastly, rule number 6. No DLC. Because DLCs are not games. Of course, if you feel that my opinion on each game is a load of bull, I do keep my PlayStation trophies and Xbox achievements public, so you can go and check those out on PSN Profiles or TrueAchievements.com. Also, if you don't see a game here, I either didn't finish it, I didn't play it, or I just didn't really care about it all that much. So do with all that information as what you will. But without another moment of delay, here are my picks of the top 10 best video games of 2024. At number 10, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Now, I know I just said that online multiplayer games don't count, and normally I would never put a Call of Duty game in a list of my favorite games of the year. I really do not care for this franchise, but for some reason this year, Black Ops 6 was a different story, and I jumped in with zero expectations and a totally open mind. Afterwards, I spent an entire month playing practically nothing else but Black Ops 6, and I wasn't just playing the multiplayer either. I spent quite a bit of time playing zombies both with friends and solo, and as I am writing and recording this, I'm playing through the campaign. My first ever Call of Duty campaign experience in the entire franchise. And I gotta say, it is freaking sick. The set pieces and diverse mission structure bring out a hunger in me that I have never had for Call of Duty before. Whether you were burned out from recent entries or you were a skeptic of the franchise like I was, please go and give Black Ops 6 a try. It is well worth the money. I have clocked in way more hours into this game than I ever thought I would. The only reason I'm putting it at the bottom of the list, though, is because of the default controls on console. The game feels horrible to play on console unless you go and change the dead zone settings for your triggers, turn off tactical sprint assist completely, and adjust your curve type. Not sure what made Treyarch think the default settings were fine, as is for console players. At number 9 we have Thank Goodness You're Here. Initially, I didn't think much of Thank Goodness You're Here. I bought the game at launch but didn't get the itch to play it until roughly 2 months later. But once I played it, it is by far the funniest game I've played all year. Despite the Cartoon Network-esque visuals, Thank Goodness You're Here has some of the most hilarious, crass humor I've seen in a game. And it isn't just profane for the sake of being profane. You'll come across characters having super inappropriate conversations through witty innuendos while acting like all of this deranged behavior is completely normal. But what really made me love the game was its clever approach in political and social issues, particularly the struggle of working class individuals and the various types of people that tend to make things harder for those individuals. Guys, this is satire. Satire is not being overtly explicit, profane, and offensive. Satire requires more wit and finesse in delivery and ridicule. Take notes from Thank Goodness You're Here. Number 8 is Super Mario Party Jamboree. For the record, I don't consider Jamboree to be the best Mario Party game. I see that conversation in some corners of the internet, and I just simply don't agree with it. I do agree, though, that this is the best Mario Party on the Switch. I have actually played this game way more than I thought I would. The 7 unique boards and meaty selection of minigames are nice and all, but what really impresses me about Jamboree is just how well balanced it is. Personally, I like my Mario Party to be as chaotic as possible. It's why I love Mario Party 5. 5 will always be my favorite. Jamboree manages to find some order in the chaos by giving small rewards to second and third place players for each minigame, while still integrating event spaces that can flip the game at a moment's notice. I have actually had games where I lost to my roommate, or worse, an AI set to normal difficulty. Although that Bowser board is the worst Bowser board in the entire franchise. I cannot stand it. Regardless, I would honestly consider Jamboree to be the best game we saw on Switch in 2024. Not that it had much competition in the first place, when the Switch mostly saw remakes and remasters this year. Number 7 goes to Star Wars Outlaws. I think I've said this in a video or two between Mojo Plays and maybe a video I may or may not have ended up making, but I am not a fan of Ubisoft. At all. I find their games to be super formulaic, their characters are often boring and forgettable, and every game is just bloated with the most mundane tasks imaginable. But when I played the demo of Star Wars Outlaws at a preview event for Mojo Plays, I came back with nothing but excitement for this game, and sure enough, it became one of my favorite games this year. Star Wars Outlaws does something I encourage every game to try to achieve, and that is playing with the player. At its core, Star Wars Outlaws is a stealth game, which is something I think a lot of folks didn't treat it as. I saw a lot of takes that seem to have misconstrued the game as like an open world action RPG or something, just from the way people were talking. But unlike most stealth games, getting caught does not always end your mission. Sometimes it does, but those are for more linear story missions. Other missions will not punish you for getting spotted, and will leave you to figure things out for yourself. There were plenty of times where I would be a little too reckless and wound up having to run through an enemy base just to find a vent to hide in, or rush to my objective while trying to make it out of shootouts alive. Not only did it create a sense of urgency and force me to adapt in the moment, it punished me with an intense firefight and made me remember to be more careful in the next encounter. Those moments were what made Star Wars Outlaws insanely fun for me. Sure, this game could have been a bit more polished at launch with the AI problems. Regardless, I think a lot of people really slept on this game, and they're going to for quite some time. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if Ubisoft's negative reputation as of late might have had a hand in the game's commercial performance. Number 6, Astro Bot. I gotta say, I honestly feel like the villain right now. Astro Bot won Game of the Year at the Game Awards this year. Even the Mojo Plays team at Watch Mojo listed Astro Bot as their #1 game of the year. For the record, I did not rank that list at all. I had no idea what was even being considered for that list, because I typically remove myself from that conversation whenever we get to ranking it. I don't normally like putting these lists together. So why is it only at number 6 for me? To be honest, I don't really have a good reason for putting Astro Bot this low compared to my colleagues. I absolutely loved Astro Bot. Every level was a joy to play as new mechanics were getting introduced, along with new ways to interact with those mechanics. I know so many other people have said something similar to this, but Astro Bot had made me smile for almost the entire game. I even went so far as to rush out the Long Play for Long Play archive as soon as the game came out. Maybe some of the fervor around this game is due to the fact that AAA companies still don't believe in the value of 3D platformers anymore, which has made us starve for this genre. I know indies have been picking up the slack a little bit, but Astro Bot was on a different scale with its visual fidelity and simplistic design choices. The only reason it isn't my game of the year is because the next 5 games have been on my mind all year. Number 5 is Balatro. In between my time playing Dead by Daylight and whatever the big release is at the moment, I was playing Balatro, and I was playing it a lot between PC and PS5. With the chill music, the different cards that can rack up a high score, and overall visual aesthetic, I became addicted to Balatro super quick. I love card games, and the majority of my board games utilize cards as their primary gameplay. So when you give me cards that grant buffs to other cards and can synergize with other cards to further boost scores, my brain starts to go nuts with the possibilities. And with Balatro in particular, every new Joker unlock was re-experiencing that same absurd level of brain blast. It's a game that makes you feel like a mad genius for breaking the rules in such absurd ways, especially when you manage to wipe the floor with boss blinds like the wall or the needle with an obscenely high-scoring hand. If you haven't already, you absolutely need to go play this game for yourself. Please. Number 4 belongs to Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. Normally, a FNAF game would have never made it into my favorite games of the year. I gave up on FNAF years ago. I thought Pizzeria Simulator was a perfect ending for the franchise, and Security Breach is genuinely one of the worst games I've ever played. Truly. But Into the Pit is truly remarkable as a FNAF game, as a horror game, and as a video game in general. And the reason I say that is because of how the audio and visuals work together despite being in 2 different dimensions. As we all know with 2D games, just about everything you need to see is viewable because of the flat perspective. However, the audio functions in a way that you can hear where enemies are lurking around in other rooms, what doors they're opening, and where they're messing around in. On top of that, you have nothing to defend yourself. You can only run and crawl into hiding spots. Even then, hiding spots will not always save you, as you'll have to perform actions like staying out of the yellow rabbit's line of vision, holding your breath while the rabbit investigates your area, or even swat away spiders. It's a game that constantly keeps you on your toes, and with the clever use of audio cues and lack of proper means to fight back, Into the Pit is one of the best and scariest games I've played in recent years, and it truly defines what it means to be a horror game, which is something I feel a lot of horror games kind of forget to do. At number 3, we have Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. It takes a truly tremendous game for me to completely disrupt my way of living. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth took 2 whole months of my life away, and I am forever grateful it did. While the story kind of fluctuated between compelling moments and scenes that felt like they dragged for a bit, Infinite Wealth managed to hook me in 2 big ways. The first is the amount of side missions. This was a game that heavily encouraged you to explore and take part in other activities besides the main story, and every single mission I did had incredible moments from narrative to humor to the rewards at the end. Whether it was Dondoko Island, the Sujimon League, or a normal side mission, Infinite Wealth felt like it always had something fun that it wanted to show me. The second hook for me was the combat. Admittedly, I'm not too familiar with the predecessor, Yakuza Like a Dragon, but from what little I played of that, the combat is more traditional and stilted there. In Infinite Wealth, your positioning matters a great deal, as it can determine what kinds of attacks you use, how much damage you inflict, how many enemies you hit, etc. For a turn-based RPG, I found this combat system to be extremely malleable and, in some cases, kind of exploitable. If you can wedge yourself into a very particular spot, you might be able to pull off a way better attack than you might have thought possible at the moment. Infinite Wealth captured me for the entire 100+ hour runtime, and it was enough to make me spend extra time on the endgame dungeon and getting the Platinum Trophy. I cannot recommend this game enough. You all need to go play this. Number 2, the silver medal goes to Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. To be completely honest, I am not quite done with this game yet. At the time of writing and recording, I am a little over 10 hours into my game, but what a wonderful 10 hours it has been. Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake is my very first Dragon Quest game ever, and what I love about this remake is not just the visuals or the new features like being able to play as a female. No, the main reason I love this game so much is because of how it manages to feel old-fashioned in the best of ways. I've played traditional turn-based RPGs before this, and this remake manages to replicate the look and feel of those games. However, what I mean by it's old-fashioned in the best of ways is how the game shows restraint from holding your hand the entire time. This is a remake of a game from the NES days, and Square Enix could have easily put some kind of waypoint system to make the game really easy for new players, or they stayed true to the game and told people, tough shit, figure it out for yourself. Instead, they give you text in your pause menu to remind you of your main objective, and a mechanic to remember recent conversations, and that's it. You are, for the most part, left on your own to explore the world, discover new landmarks, and figure things out for yourself as you try to become a hero as great as your father. In a sense, it provokes that sense of curiosity that Skyrim does, where the adventure is as great as you make it. If you're expecting a clear direction the entire time, you're not going to get the experience that makes Dragon Quest III truly special, in my opinion. And honestly, if you do need a guide and you're using a guide, you're not talking to NPCs enough. Unlike most games today, the NPCs of Dragon Quest III almost always give valuable information, whether it's related to your main objective or some secret area further away from town. I'll be doing a full video on my experience with this game sometime in the future, so expect that later down the road. Originally, this was going to be my game of the year, but then I started playing another RPG that I feel nobody has been talking about at all this year, and you're all sleeping on this. My number 1 game of 2024 goes to Dungeons of Hinterberg. It's magical. Truly magical. That is the only way I can describe Dungeons of Hinterberg. To me, when I think about what an action RPG is, this is the kind of game that comes to mind. It's not just giving the player cool attacks or having tough boss fights. A good action RPG builds a world with imaginative landmarks that feel distinct from one another, and real in how you interact with objects to solve puzzles. A great action RPG knows where its highs and lows should be to keep an even pace and focus on those beats in other areas like story and puzzles, not just combat. An excellent action RPG knows how to create thrilling combat scenarios that you may or may not anticipate, not just hide an enemy around a corner or make a boss insanely hard just to be hard. A perfect action RPG knows how to take all of those aspects and blend them into something unlike anything else on the market. Dungeons of Hinterberg is a game that I believe is innovating the genre in ways it's not getting credit for. Every inch of this game is just unbelievably creative in how story beats play out, how it keeps dungeons at an appropriate length, each one takes about 30 minutes for me to get through, and how combat encounters are placed at specific points to create exciting moments. Personally, I feel the action RPG scene has become oversaturated with games trying to be harder than the rest, darker than the rest, and just more fantastical than the rest. And it's caused some developers to miss what makes action RPGs exciting. Dungeons of Hinterberg is simply excellent in how it's not following that trend and manages to create fun and exciting moments in its own unique way, between your time exploring Hinterberg itself and your time spent fighting the mysterious, shadowy creatures plaguing the land. If you have an Xbox or a PC, I highly encourage you. You owe it to yourself to go and play this game. Dungeons of Hinterberg is truly one of the greatest games released this year, and it is just a crying shame that more people in the games media are not talking about this at all. I have not seen one outlet talk about this, except for Yahtzee over on Second Wind. That's it. To the team at Microberg Games, you should absolutely feel proud of yourselves for this kind of game. You should. You've really made an insanely fun game, which is not something a lot of people can achieve, really. And I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with next. Now, if any of the games I mentioned here interest you at all, I have included links to their respective store pages in the description below for each platform they're available on. Full disclosure, I do not make any commission on these links, nor do I intend to, nor do I want to. I am simply including them here in case you saw something that caught your eye and you want to go and buy it and play it for yourself. But to properly end the video, I hope you all had a wonderful 2024, and I hope you all have a wonderful New Year's Eve, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your support this year. 2024 was a big year for me, as I finally reached a huge milestone for my channel and my career. In May 2024, I managed to finally become a YouTube partner and monetize my channel, which is something I never thought I would ever be able to reach, quite honestly. Then, in September 2024, I put out a video about the kerfuffle surrounding Concord, which turned out to be my biggest video ever. And for the first time, I just feel like, overall this year, I feel like I've finally figured out the kinds of videos that I'm good at making and the kinds of videos that I want to make. So, I hope you all stick with me as we enter 2025. I have some really cool ideas in store for videos that I just cannot wait to finally show you, including one in particular that I've been working on for about a year now. And you're probably not going to see it for like another month or two. It all depends. It's been a lot of rewriting and tweaking and recording. It's been a lot of that. But until then, I hope you all stay safe and go out, have some fun, enjoy the new year. And I'll see you in 2025.